Victims and Villains, a podcast extension of the nonprofit that dares to educate and engage individuals on mental health awareness and suicide prevention through pop culture. I'm your host, Captain Nostalgia, and welcome to episode 2 of our Matrix series, where we're going to be looking at The Matrix Reloaded on this episode. And I'm joined by our friends over at feelin-film-podcast, Mr. Kales Davis.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's time to get reloaded.
Yeah, I like how all of these are R's. I think it are, revolutions, reloaded, resurrections.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about this. Like I said in the last episode, I don't have any connection to this franchise at all. I saw the first one way back when I was like 8 or 9, and I saw it a couple times. I've never actually seen any of these sequels, so these are all fresh watches for me. But Kales, what is your relationship to Reloaded?
My relationship to Reloaded is that it was easily the most anticipated film, when it was first released. It was at least about 3 or 4 years after the first Matrix. People didn't even know that this is supposed to be a trilogy. And I think that was part of the original plans, but they had waited a little bit to give it a lot more anticipation and hype. And I remember when it first came out, I saw the trailers and it looked like the coolest thing I had ever seen. I was like a 12-year-old kid during the time when it came out, and it honestly looked like it was the greatest film of all time. I remember seeing seeing Neo becoming more into his own, seeing Trinity, just seeing a lot more extension of the world that we got in the first film. And there was a lot more action in this film. I feel like that this is the sequel that took a more onus on the action than the story. And of course, that highway chase sequence. I mean, that's still honestly one of my favorite movie moments of all time.
So you say something that I kind of want to navigate to and just kind of spend a few minutes on. Like, you talked about how, like, perhaps the original plan when the Wachowski sisters sold this to Warner Brothers, it was for the idea of making this a franchise, making this a trilogy. And the movies that we're going to spend the next couple episodes talking about all came out in 2003. I believe Animatrix is also 2003. Kales is confirming it. Also, but like, does the story of Neo and the world that we saw in the last movie stand alone as a standalone story, or do you need the trilogy to complete what we're seeing?
I think you need it more, because we see in Reloaded that Neo is fully formed into who he is. He knows that he is the one. He knows what he is meant to do, but he's still struggling with that journey. And this film kind of deals with the struggle of choice. Like, if you had a choice to save the world, or if you had a choice to save Trinity, like, what would you do with that? And I honestly feel like that you do need these two sequels. I mean, once we get to Revolutions, that's the sequel that a lot of people are very about, but this is a world that you need a trilogy to. I mean, who wouldn't want to build up into this world? There are so many possibilities with the Matrix. I feel like if you were only to release one film, it would have been a trail of lost promise. Yes, you could have made this as one film and had an own standalone story, and it would have been something influential until this day. But having a sequel allows us to have more access into Neo, into the war between the humans and machines, and honestly, how the Matrix was built, and how do we deal with Agent Smith and their attempts to infiltrate into this world and bring it down. Yeah, there's ample opportunity to make more sequels into this. I mean, look now, we have Resurrections coming up, and that's like 19 or 18 years after Revolutions came out, but it's here, and I welcome it.
It's very interesting to me when, as an outsider of this franchise, and like this being the first time that I'm seeing this movie, I 100% agree with you. I think that leaving the Matrix, just the Matrix, you are missing out on such rich opportunities that you could tell for story and narrative and really expand this world. It's a real surprise to me that we've never seen the world past these core cast of characters in Morpheus, Trinity, and Neo that we've never actually seen, like what it was like in the beginning with the architect and kind of the first version of the Matrix. Like, yeah, we get glimpses of that here in this movie, but we've never seen that. Like, we've never seen like what happens. I mean, we're getting ready to see what happens after the events of Revolutions, or I guess so we say, because there was that IGN article that came out a couple of weeks ago that was talking about how this movie isn't quite a sequel, but it's also not quite a reboot. It's kind of like somewhere in limbo, which is very strange to me, because I feel like you have to be either one or the other. There's not like really any gray areas. And to me, I feel like the language that they have chose to use is exactly what Reloaded is. Reloaded's not necessarily a sequel, it's an extension of the story that you set out to tell in the first one. And those are the best types of sequels, movies that aren't necessarily looking to outdo their predecessors, but continue the story that they set out to tell.
Yeah, you said it right with this film being an extension, because we're still in the world. It's not nothing that we're seeing the same of everything. We're just getting more, breath, and we're getting more air into how the Matrix works and how this war is going to end. We see in the film in the beginning, Morpheus, Neo, and Trinity, they're already talking about the strategies of what they're going to do in order to keep the machines from getting into Zion and destroying the whole city. And there's also a lot of fear and a lot of, doubt about if the prophecy is true. There's many scenes in where we...
Please bear with us. Technical difficulties.
You could be wrong. And Morpheus is like, yes, what if I am wrong? And if I am wrong, well, then we'll just be dead. But hey, death can come for us anytime it wants. So what's different? But what if I am right? What if this guy is the one to do it? We have to do everything we can to put everything and make sure that this prophecy comes true. So there's difference from the hope and optimism of the first one. The second one is a little bit more darker, and you also face, the absolute, discontent of whether this is really going to happen the way it should, or is everybody doing this for nothing? Is this just truly a lost cause?
Yeah, you broke up a little bit there for a second, but I think I grabbed definitely what you're talking about with the tonality. Like, it's still the same exact story. And I think what's really interesting about this film in particular is that it's not just you're seeing the Nebuchadnezzar. Like, I feel like the first film, you didn't get to see the world outside of Nebuchadnezzar and the Matrix, with the exception of Agent Smith. Like, that was kind of the world. And this one, you have people that, like, being a Christian man myself, like, there are people that listen to this podcast that don't believe what I believe. Like, they are atheist, or they are agnostic, or they're different. They believe different things. They believe in different gods, and that's fine. But I think that to set a world and kind of give it a realistic approach, you need to have that opposition. And I'm so glad that this film explores that early on in the movie, where when they finally come into to the Zion, you're getting to see that, like, not everyone believes that Neo is the one, that he's not the end of the fulfillment of this prophecy. And I think that not only does that give it a little bit more of like an epic scale in terms of storytelling, but it also allows it to remain grounded the way that the first one did.
And also, along with that doubt that people are having about Neo, we also get to see hero worship. We get to see people that are literally worshiping Neo as the Messiah. We see when he goes to Zion, there's this kid who immediately runs up. It's like, Neo, you're here. And he pretty much comes from the group of orphans that we saw in the first film, and they talk about like how the orphans, they follow you, you know, they want to know about your next moves, and Neo has to deal with people just believing in him and seeing him as this guy who's going to be the guiding light that brings it into total destruction, total incoming destruction, and extinction of the human race. And it's interesting to see how heroes deal with that. In films, often we see when we see the heroes do heroic things, they're immediately celebrated, but we don't really get to see how they deal with that. There's a difference of you doing something for the sake of you, but what if you are a person who's doing something right in the world, but you have people who are depending on you? That adds a lot of pressure, and it adds a lot of levity, and it adds a lot of just tension to you, and a lot of stress into your life. Now, Neo, I mean, he's a guy who has superhuman ability. He can fly like Superman. He can fly out faster than speed of to do all these great things for the sake of saving a lot more lives than just him. And it's just very interesting to see, you know, him as a hero dealing with all that pressure and how he is able to withstand that and be able to do what he does.
I'm so glad that you brought up Superman, because as I'm watching this, like, there are sequences ripped out of this movie that we would later see in Superman Returns, Man of Steel, Justice League, BVS, like all of these things. And I wrote in my notes because, like, it's weird. Like, if you know anything about the history of Superman and movies, we went through this like drought after Quest for Peace in the 80s, and we didn't see Superman on the big screen again until 2006. But in viewing of The Matrix Reloaded, you beg the question, why does Warner Brothers need Superman if you have Neo? Like, Neo could basically do everything that Superman can do, and he essentially also still has the same weakness minus kryptonite, because his Lois Lane just happens to be Trinity.
Yeah, and you see it towards the end. We're kind of fast forwarding a little bit, but the scene where Trinity gets shot, which is the sequence that opens up the film, is a little bit of a flash forward where she's battling the agent. She ends up getting shot, and pretty much Neo is given a choice whether to go through this door and, you know, help along with rebuilding the Matrix as is, or going to save Trinity and possibly ending the world. And he chooses to go and save Trinity, but you see him, he's flying at the speed of sound. Like, literally, buildings, windows are crushing behind him. There's cars like up in the air that are just being pulled by his force, and he literally, it almost feels like Superman in the film where Lois Lane ends up dying, and Superman kind of goes around the globe to reverse time in order to save her life. But in this film, we kind of get the same thing where Neo is able to pull in and take the bullet out of her and be able to bring her back to life. I mean, that is clear. That's clear Superman Lois Lane territory right there. And it works. It works because Neo is the one. I mean, if you want a character to be the one, then you got to show him doing some otherworldly things and bringing somebody to life and saving the love of his life and being willing to sacrifice, you know, doing what is right, all for the name of love. I mean, that's something that anybody can get behind, especially if they're righteous.
Yes. So I have brought visual aids for those that are watching us right now on Twitch to talk about this, because while I think that we've absolutely nailed it, we're in agreement that, like, Neo is basically the archetype for Superman. I'm gonna say something controversial and a question, because I'm curious about this, man. This movie, and I don't know if it was just like I haven't seen enough like action movies from the early aughts or like what, but I am gonna undoubtedly say that I am a Zack Snyder fanboy. I like Snyder. I like him a lot, actually, and I think he gets a lot of unfair crap. And some of that criticism comes from his use of slow motion, and this movie, like, 15% at least, if not 20%, is like done in slow motion, like to the point where it feels almost nauseating sometimes. And do you think by the time that we because he's only like a year behind. 2004 is when this came out, Dawn of the Dead.
Yes.
So 1 year after all of the Matrix movies, did we just get burnt out on slow motion by the time Snyder got around to doing the DC movies?
Yeah, I think it was to a point where, you know, I said in the last episode that once bullet time came around, that's what everybody started doing. Everybody started adding slow motion because it added a lot of style, and it gave your action films a sense of epicness. Of course, if you're doing, it's not enough to have a shootout, in regular motion where people are just ducking bullets. Like, no, you got to have the scene where like the guy jumps and he's diving. He has two guns akimbo and he's just shooting and everything and taking down enemies at a slower pace. And it just looks awesome. So by the time that The Matrix Reloaded came out, I mean, especially in this movie, there are so many sequences where they really just dial it up with the slow motion. I mean, early on, there's a
So
scene
many.
where Link is talking. He's like, oh, Neo's on his Superman thing again. And you see there's a scene where Neo goes up in the air. And it's almost like he is Superman, like in Man of Steel, where he's flying up in the air and he just takes the world in and then just dives right back into the world. And then during the battle with the Agent Smiths, there's so much slow motion in that sequence, and it's enough to make you almost you see the characters look like rubber models. Like, there's a lot of special effects, and special effects haven't aged well because this is done in 2003. But the slow motion makes it more obvious, especially during the highway chase sequence. There are so many moments where characters are just flying through the air, and you can clearly see that there are stunt people doing it for. Like, it's not Lawrence Fishburne who's doing these stunts, it's someone else. And then you have vehicles crashing, and they're just slow motion every time there's a vehicle crash. And yes, it's an awesome effect, but it gets to a point where it gets tiring. The thing with Zack Snyder is that his slow motion is done in a cool way. Like, he won't use that slow motion to where it's just slow motion the whole time. Like, he'll have it fast, then it goes slow motion, then boom, he'll cut back to being fast again. I love that style. And that's more apparent in his films like 300. That's more apparent in Man of Steel, Justice League. Like, hey, I'm on the same bandwagon as you. I love Zack Snyder. I think he's kind of misunderstood. Am I a big fan of all his films? No. But he's a guy that clearly has an approach to what he does with story and to the way things look cinematically. And I can respect him for that. And I think to a point that The Matrix did kind of overblow slow motion. And then everybody started copycatting and it kind of became out of vogue.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, dude. Like, I think this movie, like, there are certain things that when it comes to it's like slow motion, it really kind of gets annoying at parts. Like, it's like, okay, it's cool in the first one, and then you get into like the second one, and like it opens up on a slow motion. Like, the idea of Trinity coming out of the building and she's shooting the agents, and like it's done very stylistically, and I'm like, okay, this is here for dramatic impact. But then by the time that you get later in the movie to like the highway chase scene, it's just like we are just going like all the way. Like, we're putting all of our chips in to do this the sequence, and we're gonna make it slow as possible. And for me, like, that's really what holds this movie back from me. Like, I am going to say something that is undoubtedly very controversial. I love this movie more than the first film.
Oh, I knew it.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. This film, though, for me, like, I think that like it shows so much more of the world, the lore, it builds up, and this film, I feel like, is the important to the DNA of what we're going to know as the Matrix moving forward. This film not only demonstrates history, but also at the same time, like, demonstrates like the current climate. And also at the same time, it brings Neo into the predominant role that we're going to see him moving forward. It's no longer an origin story. And that, to me, I think is really what is amazing about this film, among so many other things. But what holds it back is all of the slow motion, man. It's like all of the slow motion, because like I should never have to tune out of a movie, and I tune out of this movie so many times because it's like, oh, it's been 10 minutes. Here's another one. Oh, what? It's been 10 more minutes. What?
Yeah, this is for me why I say that this film is a little bit of a step down from the first film, because clearly the onus is on crowd pleasing at this point. I feel like the first film was all about setting it up. People didn't know how this is going to turn out. People didn't know how the Matrix is going to turn out. But the first one did big numbers, and it had a substantial, impact when it came not just to action films, but the filmmaking in general. So to follow that up was going to be a tall task already. And I feel that with this one, the direction was more about putting in a lot of these stylized and extensive action scenes and, keeping the story in the background. Like, yes, we get a little bit more world building. And of course, by the end, we get a lot more relevance when it comes to the idea of the Matrix. We talk about the idea of purpose, choice, fear. Those themes are still in there. But now, it's more about putting butts in the seats and about having a lot of crowd pleasing moments. And I feel that the slow motion and action helps with that. Now, for me as a 12-year-old kid, that would have been awesome and great for me. But now as a guy who's an adult now and who is a film critic, now I can kind of just step back and kind of nitpick it a little bit and be like, okay, well, it would have been great if you kind of taper down this scene a little bit, but add in a little bit more narrative. Then you might have a stronger thematic film. But I can't blame them for trying to go for being an action blockbuster because, no matter what, I mean, they could have just put out like any kind of film for a major sequel and it still would have been big numbers because it was very popular at the time. And it was something that had transcended pop culture and it already had a solidified place in that echo chamber.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first time, at least in our generation, where there was a movie released 6 months apart from each other. Correct?
Yes, first time. So I can't think of any other situation.
No, I mean we got close to it with Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends before COVID happened, but yeah, this is the first time that it's ever been done, and it's ever been done well. Now I know that Revolutions doesn't necessarily have the best track record with fans. Again, haven't seen it. We'll watch it next week. But I also think that when you're looking at this film, like, again, this film, like you were saying, like 99 set the foundation for what would grow to become the juggernaut that was the Matrix, right? So like then Reloaded and Revolutions are given to showcase what happens elsewhere. And I think that for me, like that was something that I really adored. I think that this film does really well, is that it continues on, but also at the same time, like it takes on that identity of being that action blockbuster because you can definitely feel studio interference with this movie.
Yeah, you could definitely tell that there are I mean, for any film, there's a telltale sign you could tell that corporate suits are involved in any film. If you see that there is a lot of more, scenes that are very extravagant, or if you can see scenes where they're adding in a lot of these pop culture references and a lot of these nostalgia, beats, you could tell then that corporate suits were involved. I mean, the biggest example I can think of this is the Wreck-It Ralph 2 sequel, Ralph Breaks the Internet. I remember watching Wreck-It Ralph and everything, and I was impressed. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great, but I thought it was a good anime film. But then the second film, it was like, hey, Disney has all of these properties, you know what? So let me go ahead and bring in every bit of these properties. And you could tell that it was a film made by corporate Disney. It was all about selling merchandise. And this film is not as extensive and as like in your face marketing as it would as like a Ralph Breaks the Internet, but this clearly is a film that was there to sell merchandise. I mean, look at the highway chase sequence. there's Trinity, Morpheus, and the Keymaker riding in a Cadillac, and then there's the two guys with the dreads who are riding the Cadillac truck. So hey, if you want me to say it, yeah, I'm guessing that Cadillac bought some ad money into this film. There was also commercials around that time. I think like even Burger King or like some other fast food restaurants had, where had some tie-ins with The Matrix Reloaded, and that even got more bigger when Revolutions came out. Yeah, so this is definitely a more commercial film. And you get to a point in Hollywood or in any kind of art form where usually somebody will make something and it takes off and is a big success. And then there's the pressure to follow it up and to try to make it even more successful. So what they do is they pander to the audience, in order to get the results that they desire. But oftentimes you just need to follow up on what was good in the beginning, keep that going, and add in some new elements. Now, luckily, Matrix Reloaded does do that in a couple of instances, and keeps it away from being just a surefire cash grab. But if you put the Matrix and Matrix Reloaded by themselves, put them head to head, then you could definitely tell that the Matrix was something that was written with a lot more heart, I would say, and a lot more passion than what Reloaded was. Not taken away from Reloaded, when you said your statement about Reloaded being better than the first one, it kind of hurt my heart, but I could understand it. I can understand it. I'm not taking away from you thinking it's a great film. That's your opinion and I respect it. For me, I feel that Reloaded was just more commercial and more glossier than the first one, if that makes sense.
No, I can 100% see that, because there is like a more clear like color palette. Like it doesn't feel as grimy as the original one does. You can definitely feel like there are those influences in there, and like the ad tie-ins are definitely great. But this film also does maintain a lot of its more philosophical values that I think that warrant some conversation for the back half of this episode. But before we get into that, I also think it's interesting that I can't remember the guy's name, but it's the French guy that they go to have dinner with. He talks about like Neo having predecessors, and that's another thing that I really enjoyed about this film is the possibility of there being other predecessors that came before Neo.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
Oh yes, that was a nice touch. I even forgot that was a part of the story. Like pretty much it's pretty much the sign that Neo's not really that special. Like, hey, there was copies of you Matrix. And then I kind of brought in what makes humanity, with all the imperfections. And then that didn't kind of work. So I kept just tinkering with the formula. So you're essentially just like the sixth guy who is considered the one, but you're not meant to be the guy who saves the world. You're just meant to be a guy who picks for more people to become a part of this new matrix and just carry on the legacy. And if you're not going to do that, then you're pretty much just going to render the human race extinct. And it kind of throws Neo off, and he's in denial about this. And I love this line by the architect. He's like, denial is like the easiest emotion that you can tell that a human's about to have. You can easily tell it's about to happen. And it kind of brings everything from the first film back to you, and you kind of think about it in a different way. It's like, okay, so there's not really this special significance about Neo. I mean, yes, he's a guy who has powers, and he's a guy that can do all these things, but there were more copies just like him. And what does that mean for Zion? What does that mean for Morpheus's prophecy? What does that mean about what the Oracle did and said for Neo? There's a scene in this film where the Oracle is talking with Neo, and she tells him, like, yes, you have a choice, but it's not really about you making this choice or not. It's about you understanding why you made the choice. And, it kind of brings in this whole thing back again about fate. There's many quotes that can be put into this box that talk about fate. The Keymaker talks about, we only do what we're meant to do. But what does that say about a person who doesn't get that chance to live a full life? What if they didn't get to do what they were meant to do? And what does that say about Neo as this guy who was meant to do, according to Morpheus, he was meant to do this in the war between humans and machines. But what if that's not really his purpose? What if that's the wrong purpose that was attached to him? So it kind of throws you for a loop a little bit about the illusion of choice and purpose.
Yeah, I love and I actually have it here. I love the purpose monologue that Mr. Anderson gives. There's no escaping reason, no denying purpose. For as we both know, without purpose, we do not exist. It is purpose that created us, purpose that connects us, purpose that pulls us, that guides us, that drives us. It is purpose that defines, purpose that binds us, and we are here because of you, Mr. Anderson. But even kind of like taking back some of that little bit of that first sentence, it is what I found so profound about that monologue is that everything that he talks about, even being a villain, it is purpose. And so you have throughout the course of the film, you have these themes of like you just said, being fate and, also choosing your own destiny and stuff like this. But also at the same time, it's like we spend our entire lives looking for our purpose in life. Like why am I here? Why do I have to be where I am? And it's that purpose that, like as he talks about here, that, without purpose, we don't exist. I think that, from someone that has been to really dark depths with my mental health to the point of even considering suicide, like I find that statement very profound to say, like, I felt like I was at a point where like I didn't have purpose. So I didn't feel like, therefore, like I should exist. And then, we are all here for a reason. We're all here for a purpose. And I'm going to say purpose so many times. I apologize. But it is purpose that creates us. It is, we're all here for a reason, whether we're here in this life for a reason, whether that is going to be recreationally, whether that's going to be professionally, whether that is going to be romantically or platonically, everything happens for a reason. It's purpose that connects us. What connected us was our love of film, which led into us doing podcasting, from everything from When They See Us to The Matrix, like everything that's kind of come in between. And I can go on and on and on, but it's like purpose has such a predominant factor in our day-to-day lives that I think we sometimes can overlook when we're talking about things, for, as simple as, brushing your teeth in the morning to like going to your job. Like, purpose has more meaning than I think we give it credit for in this life.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I am a true believer in purpose. I think, honestly, for people, we get so tied up into, achieving something, fast. It's all about instant gratification. It's all about, oh, this person, one of my friends right here just bought a house and I don't have a house, so I'm not doing anything. Or like, oh, this person is able to be in the career they want and I'm still trying to work to the career I want and I'm not there, so I'm a failure. I don't think it really works like that. I think that we are all here for a reason. If not, then why are we here? Many people subscribe to the belief that we're just here just to be here, that we exist. But I don't think it's just that simple. I don't want to believe it's that simple, because then you're going to start going down a rabbit hole and thinking, okay, so what about the other people who are not here right now? Like, why are they not here? What gives me the right to be so important that I'm here and other people are not able to? And it can kind of make you go crazy if you think about it. But I do believe that we are all here for a reason. Maybe we're not all going to be rock stars. Maybe we're not all going to be famous, but that's not going to stop us from being able to touch someone else's life. I feel that me being with my girlfriend, I think that's a part of my purpose. Being with her, making her happy, and her doing the same for me. I think that could be a part of her purpose as well. I think you doing Victims and Villains, helping out with mental health, and going to these film festivals and doing all these drives, I think that's your purpose. I think that, as far as Feeling Film with Aaron, him being able to create an awesome Facebook group and be able to have a podcast, I think that could be his purpose. So, yeah, I think that we're all here to do something. It's just all about trying to figure out what it is, what it is that gets us up in the morning, what it is that we can love to do no matter what kind of mood we're in, what is that gives us that joy inside of our heart. Going back to the Matrix, I feel that Neo is also a guy who is searching for his purpose, because remember, Neo is still human. There's constant reminders throughout the film. I think there's a hand-to-hand battle that goes on when they're going to rescue the Keymaker, and he ends up getting his hand cut by a sword, and the French guy's like, well, you can see he's still just a man. So Neo is also still finding his purpose. He's coming to his own and figure out that, yeah, I'm the one and I have all these amazing abilities. But by the end of the film, I feel like he's kind of wondering, like, what am I still doing here? Like, is this the prophecy? Am I the guy who's going to do this, or am I just another person who's going to fail and who's just going to be another copy that gets destroyed by the end?
He even says very early on in the movie, I wish I knew what I was supposed to do. Like there's so many times where he second guesses himself and he's so unsure. And, to your point, maybe The Matrix isn't the best movie example to talk about or to look at in terms of purpose, because of, I think when we think of purpose, we think of it being this really theatrical thing where, like, if I am not, making $1 million, then I am worthless. Or if I am not having 100,000 people or more following me on Instagram, or I'm not at a influencer level, then I don't matter. And that's not the thing. That's not the case. And, we may never on this podcast ever hit 1 million downloads in a year. That doesn't matter to me, because at the end of the day, like, if one person can hear this episode, one person can watch a YouTube review or read one of our reviews, or meet us at a convention or a film festival and understand that they have value and that they understand they have worth, then every single thing is been worth it. And I think that's what we oftentimes get lost in, because it's so easy to compare ourselves. But a lot of the things that you talked about, like, are so simple and they're so small, but like they are, sums of the greater whole. Like, if I have a penny, eventually, the more pennies I have, I'm going to accumulate dollars. So, the fact that like I can be a good husband is a part of my purpose. The fact that I can be a good friend and a good leader is part of my purpose. The fact that I can provide for my family, and so on and so forth. Like that list just goes on and on. Like there's so many different things that make up your purpose, and they're very tiny, but once they're accumulated, there's a larger, bigger picture that proves that and echoes your value and worth. And it might not be ever hit influencer level, but don't compare yourselves, because eventually in the end, you're going to end up doing more damage to your mental health than you realize.
Yeah, I think what you said should be something that a lot of these kids growing up in this, social media dominated generation should hear, because they have gotten their worldview twisted by what they see on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and whatnot. They see people who are so-called living a good life, but it's a curated sense of a good life. Every one of us goes through our ups and downs, but we're definitely not going to show our downs on social media. I mean, anytime we're taking a picture or we're writing a post, we're writing about something good that's happening, but we're not going to write something that's about something bad we're going through, unless it's something that can be used to teach somebody. And I think that's what gets lost in this world, is that many people think that, oh, I got to have a lot of money, or, oh, I got to have so much of this in order to make a difference. Like, no, making a difference is a choice. The Matrix, they talk about that there's the illusion of choice, but I honestly feel that you do have a choice. You have a choice to do the right thing. You have the choice to be a good Samaritan. You have the choice to be a good husband or a good wife. You have a choice to help out your fellow man when they're in need. You have a choice to do something that's out of the goodness of your heart, taking a picture of it, because if you take a picture of it and prove it to other people that you're doing something good, that's not the same thing. So, but I mean, it's all about, making a decision every day to be a better person than what you were yesterday. And I think if you make that a life goal, just being better than what you were the day before, then you're going to get a lot of good results. You're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to feel like you don't have to adhere to a certain expectation or to a certain status or to a certain position in life, because honestly, it's a crapshoot. It's a luck. It's a draw of the luck. Most of the people you see who are famous is not because that they were more talented or skilled than anybody else. It's because they got lucky and were able to get the certain connections, and they were able to know some people. They were born to wealth, and they were able to get those opportunities. So many times people have to realize that you got to make your world better. Don't worry about changing the whole world. Just make your world better, and you will live a more fulfilling life.
Oh, I 100% agree. And there is another quote in here from Morpheus that says, I'm here not because of the path in front of me, but the path that lies behind me. Never underestimate your story. Never underestimate your struggles, because that's one of the things that, being in mental health has been one of the biggest frustrations, is because like there is so much stigma around mental health. And the reason that, yes, it's uncomfortable, but to your point, Celeste, what you just talked about, like it's incredibly difficult to, share our struggles with people. Like we're not going to post our worst lives on the internet. Like we're going to do it in like the last statement that you made. Like it's all about also the heart motive of why you do things. Like I don't want to help a elderly woman walk across the street and then be like, hey, take a selfie with me. Like, so like I can prove that this really happened. Like, no, it's like, I'm going to do this out of the kindness and the goodness of my heart. And also to, the point of, I mentioned earlier in the show, like I was at a low spot years ago where like I contemplated suicide, and I am here today doing this podcast right now because of the path that lies behind me, because of the struggles that I've had. And we create this content with the hopes that it is going to be people that are going to come alongside of us and see that they're not alone, and be reminded that there is hope and that there are resources out there. And again, it's not necessarily always about what lies ahead of you, but the path that has led you to where you are now.
Yeah, and also Morpheus, in that same speech that he gives before there's that big party in Zion, he talks about getting rid of that fear. There's many times in life where you're going to be faced with a lot of things that are going to make you want to run away. But courage is not just you standing up to something that's insurmountable. It's standing up knowing that you have that fear inside of you, but still deciding to go ahead and go through with it. So with Morpheus, he understands that Zion is going to be tragedy. There's going to be pain. The machines are coming, and while we can just sit around and wallow and just wait for them to do it, I'm not going to do that, because I have belief. I have hope. I believe, we've been fighting these machines for hundreds of years, and, I'm just carrying on what my ancestors and what people were doing before me, because Morpheus has a strong sense of fortitude in his heart. You've noticed that throughout all the films, especially when it comes to revolutions, Morpheus still has that belief. Nothing can tamper his belief. People come up to him and tell him that, oh, I don't think Neo is the guy, or how do you think that Zion's going to be able to survive this? It's like, I don't really know. I don't really have the answers, but I have the belief that things will turn out right. And if we can do these things, if we can make sure that the prophecy comes true, if we are willing to sacrifice, if we're willing to stand up, through the tough times, then we're going to be able to get through. Now, he understands that not everyone's going to be able to make it through, but at the same time, if it goes back to purpose, if it's all about saving the human race and all about keeping Zion on its feet and all about defeating the machines, then what do you have to lose? It's all about having that mental strength, having that, that grittiness to be able to know that no matter what comes ahead, we're going to be ready for it and we're not going to back down. And it's very powerful. And that's going to take more of an onus once we get to Revolutions, because that was supposed to be the supposed end of the trilogy. So,
yeah, that's what they keep saying. But here we are, counting down the weeks till we get the fifth installment in this franchise. I think that into like Morpheus being in a position of power too, and like uniting people like Link and Trinity and Neo and so many of the other crew members, it's really important too to also make sure that you have people that are like-minded around you, but also at the same time that see value in what you're doing. And that can kind of, create a safe haven for your own mental health, because I think that, being in a spot of singular mental health is sometimes can be is a very tricky thing, because it can be both really good for you, but it can also be really bad. Like I will still occasionally have days where like I get anxiety over just dumb things, and because I have like a group of people that I've allowed in, and I can just be like, hey man, like I'm going through this, can like we stop real quick and like maybe say a prayer or like talk about this real quick, like. And I think that Morpheus with the Nebuchadnezzar is able to also have that intact.
Yeah, most definitely. And we can also see that at the end when Trinity, Neo comes to Trinity and asks her because he has fears about her, because he sees premonitions about her possibly dying. He tells her, hey, can you stay back here? Let me, Morpheus, be able to take care of this, and you just stay back because I'm worried about you. But we see that Trinity, when she sees that Neo and Morpheus are probably going to their death, she's like, no, I'm not going to sit back here and just watch them go to their death. I'm going to do something about this. And she goes in and she wreaks havoc, and she's able to get them closer to what their final goal is. And that is what a true hero is. Sadly, we don't get to see a lot of Trinity in this film. Not a lot that we saw in the first film, because Neo, and kind of Morpheus and kind of the other characters take more of a presence in this one. But Trinity, she's definitely the same as Neo, a hero that is able to do otherworldly things, especially that scorpion kick. I think that Carrie-Ann-Moss, I read an interview that Carrie-Ann-Moss did that for real and everything, and that's pretty impressive. But Trinity is also one of the same. She is a character who is willing to sacrifice for the ultimate good. And I think that's what's one of the common things about the Matrix. It's all about sacrificing for the ultimate good, doing things for other people, even if they don't know who you are, even if they don't even will ever know that you existed. Doing things for other people to help enhance their life.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Yeah, I agree with that. And again, I just want to point out how many parallels to Superman this movie has. You bringing up the fact that like Trinity's not in this movie all that much. Lois Lane. Just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, very much Lois Lane. And if we're going to do a comparison, we got to talk about the Lois Lane from Joss Whedon's Justice League. I think that could be a apt comparison, or the Lois Lane from Batman vs Superman, not the director's cut, but the original version.
Yeah, and our offer still stands that once we hit 1,100 likes on Facebook, it's facebook.com/victims and villains. We're going to live stream a burning of the Justice League Blu-ray. The Justice League, as our friends, you have to watch this, say. But yeah, I really also too, I think that there's a lot of awesome things that they do in this movie. Like let's talk about like the fact that like Mr. Smith can like Agent Smith now can basically recreate himself and like have an entire army. Like that is a true antagonist and threat.
Oh yes, Agent Smith now has the ability where he can just go up to somebody and just stick a hand into him, just create Agent Smiths. And that's where we get the big battle between Neo versus the Agent Smiths. There's like insurmountable numbers of them, and they just keep coming in waves. And it's like nothing you can stop. Because remember, Agent Smith is a central program. He has a purpose. His purpose is to eliminate anything that could cause the machines to fail. And I think in the first film, he had more of a character. In the second film, he's kind of just, okay, he's Agent Smith, and you know what he's all about. So it's all about trying to stay away from him, to dodge away from him, and make sure that he doesn't achieve what he does achieve. But I still do love that aspect of his character, that he gets to just turn anybody into him, because it makes for a more formidable nemesis for Neo to fight. Because in the first film, we see that Neo is able to get the upper hand, and we thought that was the end of Agent Smith, but he comes back bigger, stronger, and reloaded, from the title.
So all right, I want to hear your theory on this, because like we only see this really in the freeway scene where like random drivers are like turned into Miss Agent Smith. Like, does he just have like this, like, is he like the real architect of the Matrix? Like he could just kind of like wield everything at his discretion as he sees fit.
Yeah, because I mean, remember he pretty much just downloaded into the Matrix as a program. So I think that he pretty much can do anything he wants to in the world. He could just like change right into any citizen he wants to, and it makes for honestly a tougher challenge for the heroes to fight against, because we see during the highway chase scene, like any car, like any of the police cars or any of the trucks that are being driven on the road, Agent Smith can just turn himself into them like at an instant. And I think honestly there is a point where you think like, hey, maybe this guy could be the real architect of the Matrix, because he could just come in and come out whenever he wants to.
That's the thing that like I'm confused about though, is because like they set up so many of his like army transferences where like he has to like stick his hand inside their chest, and then like they turn into like weird CGI 2000s goo, and then they become Agent Smith. And he tried it on Neo. Neo was like, no, bro, let's go. And then like, but like by the time you get to the third act with the climactic freeway sequence, it's like, oh no, he can turn anyone into Agent Smith.
Yeah, because you can see before when they're with the keymaker and they're about to go through the door that leads to the architect, he was almost about to turn Morpheus into into Agent Smith, and he almost turned Neo into Agent Smith, but that clearly didn't work out. So yeah. It's going to be very interesting how his character is, improved upon when it comes to Revolutions, because I don't really remember Revolutions all that much, but I do know that there is like almost like a climatic battle between Neo and Agent Smith. And it's very kind of poetic because they are, like you said, they're made from the same thing. They each have a purpose, and their purpose is each other. It's almost like a weird sense, like a Batman Joker kind of relationship, like where Batman and Joker depend on each other in a sense.
I was gonna go Sherlock Moriarty, but yeah, like I like the Batman Joker dynamic that you example. I think they definitely are, and I am also curious to see how their dynamic, or at least some hints of it, is going to play into Resurrections, because I don't think that Hugo Weaving's actually a part of that cast.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that.
I could be wrong. I could be 100% wrong, but we haven't seen him in any of the marketing, so. And I haven't watched any trailers yet, so like I don't know anything about this movie, but I'd be curious to kind of see where he fits into the larger scheme 20 years removed.
Yeah, because they also talk about that this new Resurrections is an alternate Matrix where Neo ends up, embarking upon what he wakes up into. So I'm wondering, like, does Agent Smith remain a part of the old Matrix that is possibly destroyed, and there's maybe a new foe that comes along, but it's not an Agent Smith? It's going to be very interesting to see, because I didn't see him in the trailers at all.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where their battle kind of like climaxes in resolutions. So yeah, I think that you brought up a good point about his character, though, is that we don't ever see him like he just kind of does his thing now. Like he's not quite the Agent Smith we saw from the first one. He's just kind of like a caricature almost. Like he still retains some of the same values, but ultimately like it's kind of almost like a different character now.
Yeah, he's kind of the guy that's just there to be the big heavy, as they say. He's just the villain, and that's all he's there for. I mean, I found in this film, actually, the French guy was more of a villain. The older program of the Matrix was more of a villain than Agent Smith was. I mean, this guy has been around for centuries, and he even tells Neo that, hey, there have been guys who have been like you that have came at me, and I've destroyed them, and I will outlive all of you. I'll outlive you as well. And you can see that this guy, he creates these programs. There's a scene where they're in the restaurant and he's explaining to Neo and Morpheus and Trinity about this cake that he was able to build in this program. And, we see this woman eating this cake and everything. And I'll keep it PG. It makes her a little bit excited, and everything. But it's all for the aim of the French guy to be able to go into the bathroom and engage in some extracurricular activities with her and everything. So I would have liked to see more of him, of the French guy. I would have liked to see more of his story. I found him to be very interesting, as a concept.
Yeah, him and Monica Bellucci too. Both of their characters definitely seemed like they were in it for like a pivotal scene, but nothing more than that, which is strange because I remember like even not seeing this, but like I remember seeing Monica Bellucci. Yeah, I think I said that right. I remember seeing her like poster for Matrix Reloaded at cinemas. So like the fact that she has like both of them have such an insignificant part in here, like is very strange to me.
Yeah, it is very strange. I mean, they do make their mark with the minutes that they are given, but there's so much more to their story. I mean, especially when we see Monica talk about how, her and the French guy, when they were first in love, they had a great relationship. But now it's not like that anymore. The French guy is clearly a womanizer. He's a guy that clearly is doing dirty to her and just like doesn't really love her anymore and sees her almost as a trophy wife at this point. And the scene where, she asks Neo, like, I just want a sample of that love. Many people could see that as being kind of disrespectful to Trinity, but I saw this as just a woman who is clearly hurt and who's clearly going through some things. She clearly is stuck in this relationship with this guy who doesn't care about her, and she just wants to feel something again. And that's something that we can all understand. I will never, ever condone cheating. I will never, ever condone adultery. But honestly, when I hear these stories of people who have done it, they say the same thing. It's like, I was stuck with this guy or this girl who clearly wasn't showing me affection, and it wasn't like it was before. There wasn't any sparks. There wasn't any love. There wasn't any feelings. There wasn't any care. And I was trying to go out and find that again. And that's what she was clearly trying to do. I also thought it was funny when she said she wanted a sample, and Trinity pulls out her guns like, why don't you sample this?
The cheesy quips of the early 2000s. No, I think you honestly stole everything that like I would say about, I've been cheated on, and it's honestly another extremely low point into my mental health state. I would never want anyone to ever feel that pain. And, you really kind of question your own worth as an individual and during those times. And that's just never, to your point, Celeste, it's just never condoning it. And the reason that we oftentimes hear stories of infidelity is because of exactly what you're talking about. Like, just not being seen, not being heard, not being like, they really feel like they have a place within the relationship anymore. We as humans were not meant to be trophy husbands, partners, wives. We are meant to exist in relationship with one another, to be bonded and to be loved and to be loved by another person.
Yeah, because I feel that humans, we're all about trying to find connection. I mean, that's the reason why, if people are feeling lonely and don't have a full circle of friends, it can lead to depression, anxiety, stress. We're all about, feeling close with somebody, and it doesn't have to be a sexual connection. It just has to be about feeling like someone appreciates you for who you are. Someone likes you for who you are. Someone wants to hang out with you because they like being around you. I mean, it's a very special thing, and it kind of gets lost, in this day and age. Me and my girlfriend, we often talk, and we talk about how hard it would be for us to date in this current age, because now it's not really about connection. It's about just straight like hookup culture, or it's about people who are clearly indecisive, about who they want to be with, and they're afraid of getting hurt, so they don't want to commit. It's very hard to find that kind of commitment these days. And I think they should have did a spinoff of this. They should have gave us a little quick spinoff of this whole French guy and the Monica Bellucci character. Show us the background. Show us what they're doing, before Neo and Trinity and Morpheus come into their orbit, and show us what they're doing right afterwards. Because then it's funny, because at the end of the action scene where Neo just destroys all of the French guy's minions, the French guy murders himself. This girl is going to be the death of me. So it's clear that she has done something like this before in the past numerous times.
That also begs the question, too, is how long has she been in the Matrix as well? Because if he's been in there for, centuries, how long has she been in there?
Dang, that is a really good question. Like, who knows? Could she be a creative program for him? Like, maybe he created her in a lab or something, do some code, and like maybe she just doesn't realize that, or she does realize that she is a part of code. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things you can extrapolate with that situation.
Well, we get to see what takes place in the Matrix outside of the trinity of our heroes in a couple of weeks when we cover the Animatrix, which neither one of us have seen, so I'm super excited for this one. But I think that's going to do it for us on this episode. Where can people find more information about Feelin-Film, though?
Well, you can find us on all the major social media sites. We also have a awesome Facebook group that Josh is a part of. If you want to come there, if you love film and you want to come to a safe space and talk about your love of film, then come and join us. We welcome anybody in all flavors, all colors. And hey, check out some of our episodes on Feelin-Film. Check out our website. We still have some written reviews up there. They're from 2 years ago. It hasn't been updated in a while, but they're still there.
It's true. If you have hot takes on movies, they accept you just the way that you are.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some really spicy hot takes recently with going through the Matrix series and Spider-Man. So, man, if you guys want to hear thoughts on Spider-Man, consider supporting us on Patreon at the $5 tier, where we're going through the Spider-Man movies, every single one. And with that said, you guys can follow me. I am at Captain Nostalgia on Letterboxd. Where can people find you online, though, sir?
You can find me on Facebook under my real name, Celeste Davis. You can find me on Instagram and Letterboxd under Black Nerd Magic. I'm a very sociable guy. I like to talk about film and I like to make new friends. So come check me out. I don't bite.
It's true. At least not that I've ever seen. I've never been in the same room with him. So anyways, you guys can follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We are everywhere. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. And as well, you guys can find on our website, victimsandvillains.net. You guys can find more episodes like what you're listening to right now. You guys can find movie reviews, and also as well, you guys can also find our mental health resource library as well. Thank you guys for hanging out. And well, in the words of The Matrix Reloaded, this conversation is to be concluded. Have a good night, guys.